amplified.
Welcome everybody to the AMNER MARTINEZ Podcast. This is season 5. It's official. 2020, yeah, 2023.
It's 4.
No, last year was 4.
Yeah?
Yeah, man.
God
So
damn.
season 5, and yeah, we're back. Bigger team. Now we have Abraham Lopez. He's our full-time media producer. He's off camera right now. And then we have Isabella Martinez. She's our social media manager, full-time.
No relation whatsoever.
No relation to AMNER Martinez.
Yeah, no relation to AMNER Martinez.
No nepotism
No
going on.
nepotism going on.
No, you know what? I'll talk about that at some point.
No, I don't want to talk about it.
And then you and I, we're still on board. Anyways, season 5, we're coming back, and I'm embarking in this. Anyways, let me ask you first. What's up with you? Well, like, you just got back from Mexico.
Yeah, not a whole lot has happened.
You got married?
I was gonna say I got married, asshole. Now I look like
Yeah. Now it looked like yeah.
like I didn't like I forgot
Mhm.
I got married.
Yeah.
No, I got married.
Yeah.
My wife and I are expecting a baby,
Yeah. That's wild.
so be on the lookout for a baby that's an asshole. If you see a baby after June that's an asshole,
That's your baby.
probably my baby. Yeah,
All right, but that's it's a new chapter in your life.
yeah.
You think it's probably gonna make you more in touch with humanity.
Maybe.
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah, definitely.
I think so, for sure.
Yeah, you're happy about it.
Yeah, I'm very happy.
Yeah, duh. And you just got back from Mexico. You've been like Hawaii, Mexico,
Yeah, I've been moving around a lot,
and traveling.
traveling, doing the thing.
You're gonna quit DJ.
I'm trying to be an influencer.
Ah, yes.
I influence like 3 people on YouTube. Yeah,
You've influenced 3 people.
3 people. Yeah, I think I got like maybe 1 person to think about going to Hawaii.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah.
The traveling companies are gonna start hitting you up.
Yeah, very soon. I even had an idea about.
Mhm.
I was looking at that little town. I was like, I need to bring American people here.
Huh. So you want to buy land now in Hawaii? What a
Yeah, I just want
groundbreaking idea. No, nobody thinks about that.
No, not in Hawaii, in Mexico.
Still, same thing.
Yeah,
Everybody
I wanna
thinks
do-
about that. Kenji.
I want no, like this is very unique. It's like I wanted to gentrify. I wanted to make it very expensive for the locals to live there.
Gentrify a small town.
I'm kidding. No, I'm not. I'm not doing that. But it is a problem, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a big problem.
So you're doing serious things. You're doing grown-up stuff. You got married. That's
Right.
grown-up stuff.
Right.
You having a baby. That's grown-up stuff.
Grown-up stuff.
You have a full-time job.
Yeah, that's
Grown-up stuff. And you're quitting DJing.
yeah.
That's grown-up stuff.
Yes.
You're growing up
Yeah. So why
right
is
in
this-
front of our
why is this-
eyes.
Why is this episode like, about me?
Trying to catch people up with what
Okay,
you've been up
okay,
to.
alright. So what about you, man?
So but wait, one last
But
thing.
what about you?
You're gonna do like a goodbye tour for your DJing.
No, I'm
Tell
not.
tell
I'm
everybody
not doing
about
any
that.
any of that shit. I'm not doing any of that. I don't want people to be like, oh man,
Yeah.
good run.
Yeah.
No, I don't give a shit.
You,
I kinda
you
just
don't like
quietly
my
want to-
ideas of like doing like one last time with
No,
DJ Zen.
no, not at all. I just want to like quietly, kind of like the Mutis thing.
Quietly fuck
Vanish. Yeah, fuck off into the night.
off.
Yeah.
Quietly.
Very quietly.
All right.
What about you?
I think just been working, growing the company,
Losing hair.
losing hair.
Getting a shinier fucking
Yeah.
forehead. Okay?
My forehead just keeps on getting like
Shinier and shinier.
yeah.
It's hurting my eyes a little bit. There's the reason
I don't know what to do. Yeah,
that's the reason why I got transitions.
Maybe
I knew I was gonna be in here.
Yeah. So I caught myself watching this video of like somebody putting on a toupee. You know those videos?
Mm-hmm.
I saw the whole thing and I was like,
You ran into it, or you looked it up?
no, I ran into it. So like even the algorithm knows or something.
Yeah,
you know?
Okay, maybe this fuck will want. So.
Yeah, I'm getting
If you stop
stuff.
uploading selfies, it'll stop suggesting.
So that's what it's losing hair and just kind of keep on growing the business.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And amplified. So that's another. This 2023, we're coming back. It's serious now. Serious business. And so I'm embarking in this conversation, or like I want to dive in the next few episodes with people that are in the DEI conversation, and I'm getting like educated. It's like 101. So that's why my next few guests is going to be a lot of conversation about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Uh-huh.
And our first guest is Audrey Kennis. She is the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I have to look because I kept on messing up on the inclusion part. I kept saying inclusivity, but it's inclusion. So that's kind of what, DEI to me started kind of coming up around my head like 2 years ago, maybe, and I was like, what's DEI? So I was like, if I don't know.
A lot of people, especially on LinkedIn,
yes.
about DEI, I'm like, oh, okay, DEI. I have to look it up.
Right. So if I don't know, how can we expect for people that, we want to change their hearts and minds? How can they know if we don't even know? So that's why this is my something that I want to do is like kind of explore this conversation with people that are doing it. That's their job that's their literal role, and our experts on it.
So now, like, there's companies that have
a
DEI person.
Yes, that's their
completely in charge of.
She works for the city of West Des Moines.
Okay,
so the city of West Des Moines hired her. Like Hy-Vee has a director of DEI. The big corporations, the smart companies are they know that they have to invest into this. So we talked with Audrey about the dynamics and of society, of how there's push on both sides, wokeness, whatever that is. I don't use that word, I swear. Woke or wokeness, how it's being weaponized and how it's been tagged to DEI and how,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's just it's
fucked up.
Yeah, it's a conversation that I think it's necessary because that's why I even on my conversation with her, I was like, what is DEI? What do those three letters mean? But after I spoke with her, I'm realizing that this is not a 3-letter thing. This is more about philosophy, and she breaks it down clearly. But one of the things that I took away is that she said, what is it to be fully human? Like and I'll give you her bio here in a second, but so if you break down this DEI and all this stuff to that question, I think that's a good starting point. So Audrey came in and spoke with me, and I think this conversation is important because, when you're at a workplace, especially in the workplace and in society, you do want to feel like not extra special or more important, but just at least that you...
Me personally, at least in the workplace.
At
least.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care, whatever goes on outside, but at least in the workplace, I want to... I don't know. I don't want to feel like, oh, yeah, that's that dude.
You don't want to feel excluded.
Excluded.
Yeah.
I also don't want to be included.
But that's another conversation.
I don't want to be included too much.
Don't include
Just
me
don't,
on
don't
everything.
exclude me. Let me choose what I get to be included in.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, so that's, I think it's an important conversation because there's legislation getting passed through. Obviously politicians are, it's like red meat to their constituents and, saying, oh, look how I'm being conservative and look how I'm being protecting you and your children. But in reality, it's affecting people in real ways, and the people that they pretend to be protecting is not really about the people they think they're protecting.
Well, I think it's kind of funny that there's a lot of people that don't want the government in your life, but then when it suits them, they want the government in your life.
They're inconsistent.
So that DEI, whether you agree with it or not, it's a private investment.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit? If a company decides to make the investment and have that type of environment for their employees, whether you agree or not, then who cares? It's a private decision. It's a decision of a private company.
Yeah.
Let them do it. And if you kind of want to have a toxic environment, you want to be assholes in the office, then do that too. And then
and then you see what it looks like.
Yeah, and then people can choose. Some people like toxic environments. Some people thrive in that. Let them be in there. And the people that want to, a friendlier, more amicable environment, let them make those investments.
Yeah.
And don't criticize.
I was talking to Joshua Barr yesterday too, and also with Audrey, we talk a little bit about it. There's a financial aspect to this that smart institutions and smart organizations know, that there's a financial aspect to it. So the better you are, the more inclusive, the more conscious you are about the workplace and where your organization is. It's a financial reward for you. You just have to invest in it in the beginning.
Well, they know that for instance, demographics change, and so inclusion, it's become part of your your calculations, whatever the hell, that you need to, not, you need to not to exclude demographics from benefiting from your business and vice versa.
Yes.
So they know that it's a calculated decision.
Yeah.
It's a business decision to be, to have the diversity,
equity and inclusion. Yeah. So that's what it's gonna be. That's the kind of conversation, because it's not black and white. It's not three letters. It's more to it. Is what is it to be human? And that's kind of one of my takeaways. But Audrey is she's so intelligent. So let me tell you a little bit about her. So right now she's a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion of the city of West Des Moines. She's won awards. She's originally from Denver. She went to the University of Dubuque. She has a bachelor's in the elementary education and philosophy.
Ooh, nice.
She has a master's of education with a certificate in social education. She's currently finishing her second master's in community and regional planning at Iowa State University. Let's see. She's won several awards, including the 2021 College of Human Science Outstanding Young Professional Award, the Martin Luther King Jr. Advancing One Community Award, the 2017 Award for Inclusive Excellence. In 2015, the College of Design Academic Advising Award, and several others.
Nice.
Yeah, she's an active member of the community and serves an advisory board member with the Story County Community Foundation, and she's the member of the Ames NAACP and member of Friendship Baptist Church. How unaccomplished do you feel?
I was gonna say that I'd never heard of so many awards. I never had any aspirations.
Yeah. I won the most promising JV in wrestling. That's my award.
Oh, wow.
That's
wow.
It's
It's kind of like one of those participation trophies.
yeah.
Most promising.
Yeah.
You could say that about anybody.
But I still have it. You won a competition in French.
I'm actually proud of that. I'm very proud.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. Of my
But I actually beat others to get it.
I did too. I was very promising.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have a plaque. But it just goes to show, like, she's we talked about philosophy and what drives her. What because this type of work, man, it's very draining because you're swimming against the current. Because society is there's a pushback on all this conversation of diversity.
We need more philosophy.
Yes,
we need philosophy in elementary.
Yeah, she's a thinker, man.
Yeah.
Like, the city of West Des Moines is lucky to have, like, fits perfectly for this role. So I hope everybody enjoys the conversation as much as I did. And obviously, thank you to Audrey Kennis for making time for us. And this is Audrey Kennis on the AMNER MARTINEZ Podcast. So you're in the middle of the DEI conversation, which is it's such a 3 letters: diversity, equity, and inclusivity. Inclusion.
But inclusivity, same thing. You're right.
So, but there's so much more to this, So I'm kind of wanting to explore this conversation more with the people that are doing it. But what is it to you? What is this 3 letters?
What does this mean? And I'll be honest, there's more than 3 letters. So, it's ever evolving. It's like there's DEI, A, accessibility, there's B, belonging. And again, as we're really exploring what it means to be fully human, I think people are toying around words to really get at the essence of our humanity, right? Like, the most human thing for me is to feel like I belong. Right? The most human thing is to want to feel included, right? And so we're trying to get at this very natural, but doesn't always occur, right? Phenomena of what it means to be fully human and fully recognized. And so it's a fascinating conversation right now. It's been since the creation of time. So one thing I have to remind people is that this is not a new conversation. It's probably newer for some to be talking about these elements, but diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, belonging, all of this has been around since the creation of our existence, right? And so, again, it's a condition of our humanness. It's really fascinating. And I always tell folks, we are all represented within that acronym. Like, we can all find ourselves, or should be able to find ourselves. So it's been, I've been perplexed in recent, I would say, years and weeks, especially on how we're trying to kind of distort what this means, right? We're talking about it being divisive.
Right.
Inclusion isn't divisive, right? No. That's counterproductive. And so I think we have to take back the narrative almost in a way and help folks to see where they're reflected within that acronym.
And not to take this conversation too far off into this, but is it possible that some of this, so the DEI conversation, some people are kind of tagging it a little bit to woke or wokeness. I don't know what that means, but and then weaponizing it. Is that an extension of DEI, or therefore they're making it into an extension of it?
And I think we're trying to conflate these two things, right? And again, and it is in a way, right? We want to be conscious, right? And so when we talk about woke, what does woke mean? Yeah. Right? Like let's really define what we're saying when people are saying we want to be woke. We want to be conscious instead of disconscious, right? And so I would imagine most of us want to have a level of awareness or consciousness as we're moving about the world, right? Yeah. As we're engaging with people across difference, there needs to be a level of consciousness of ourselves, but also of others. And so we've kind of put it with this term wokeness, right? And we try to put negative connotations on it. But in all actuality, there's nothing negative about being aware, right? Now, we can try to say woke is what it is, right? And people can try to disparage the term however they may choose. But I think what we're really trying to get to is a level of awareness.
Yeah.
And again, awareness isn't divisive.
Which, by the way, I don't use it because it's been put as such. So I prefer being conscious or aware. Because there's now in the echo chamber of media, social media, and cable news and all that stuff. That word is out there, and it's starting to feel like a negative thing.
Just like DEI, right?
Right.
We're creating laws and legislation to not talk about diversity. Like that's not, how do you not talk about something that is, right? That's like saying we're not going to talk about the universe.
Yeah.
It just is a byproduct of existence. Like that, it just doesn't make sense. We can't restrict something that already naturally is. But again, it's interesting to see how this is kind of being pushed. And I think there is some legitimacy on all sides, right? We have to be able to kind of come back and listen. Like, where is maybe the misunderstandings, or how are people mischaracterizing what inclusion looks like or what diversity means, and why do people feel left out?
So this is, we're going to take it DEI 101, because to be honest, I started hearing the 3 letters maybe 2 years ago.
Okay.
So, and I'm supposed to be in this field where I feel like I should know more of this and be stronger about it. So I'm like, if I don't know, then how do I expect
everyone else to know?
The HR manager or the CEO of this corporation to know. So DEI, when as from your experience, when did you started to like hear the conversation? What was the biggest impact? I know that George Floyd murder was a big awakening part, but tell me a little bit more about when did you hear these first 3 letters, and how has it evolved, and what is it for somebody that has never heard of it?
Yeah, listen, that's a great question, because I think everyone's trying to make sense of like these terms that kind of just emerged. I don't know if I can pinpoint when I first heard the acronym, right, like DEI, but I've always worked generally in a space of education.
Okay.
So my background is education, higher education particularly. My background's also philosophy.
Okay.
And so really, I started grappling with these terms, I would say, really as a child. Like this goes back to my lived experience growing up. I had a father who was born before the Great Depression. Like how many people of my age could say that, right?
Yeah.
And so watching his life, and then I had a mother who, was a child of the 60s and the Civil Rights Movement. And I'm watching these 2 different generations try to make sense of their existence. And so we would talk about these issues in ways, right? We didn't use the term diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we were talking about our humanness, our existence, right? What does it mean to walk through life, with all these intersecting identities, right? My father, who, again, was born, during the Depression, before the Depression, had all these kind of austerity ways of looking at the world, very frugal. And like that was, all these things impacted the way he moved. And he internalized a lot of racism or oppression, right? And so I'm watching how it impacted his mental health. It impacted his role even as a father, as what he would have perceived as a leader within the house, my mother. And so it was always this healthy tension in my house. And so I was always like watching this going, how can they come, both identified as Black, 2 Black parents, in one household, and have very different opinions on the world. And so I was trying to make sense of it. And, I went to college and I was majoring in philosophy and elementary education, and we weren't really calling this, but we would talk about social justice, right? We didn't have that term at that time, at least, of DEI, but we were talking about what is social justice? What does justice look like? We're reading Plato and many other philosophers, so I'm trying to make sense of justice and morality and equality, and like, what does this all mean? And so it wasn't until I went to, I would say, I got my first job. I was working in education and recruitment, and I started pursuing my master's in education, and this is where really we started having these conversations. at a graduate level around what it means to define culture. What does identity look like? What does education look like? How do you create culturally responsive education? And so in order to get to those places, we have to talk about the diverse identities that are in a space, right? And as we talk about those diverse identities, how do we ensure that everyone feels included in that conversation and also sees themselves reflected in the curriculum? And so as you're talking about these concepts, that's where kind of some of these terms start to emerge. And then there's a lot of scholarship. We talk about critical race theory, right? Lat crit, queer crit. I mean, there's all sorts of theories that are out there that you're kind of grappling with. And that's what you do in education, right? You're trying to make sense of kind of these abstract concepts. But I would say overall, really it comes down to something very basic. It can get very abstract, but it's very basic.
I see.
And really, it's just about our differences, right? And similarities and commonalities, right? So we're looking at what are some of your different experiences that impact the way that you move the world, right? And then where are some of those similarities or those entry points where we can find common interest, right? And then how do we make sense of all this together? Because we have this shared community.
Yes.
And so how do we live
It's
together?
hard to understand it. I just kind of go from my point of view. If it's hard for me, then but some people say it's the job of the corporate, is the job of the person, of the historically oppressor to make the changes. So sometimes there's more to that.
Yeah. And that's a complicated conversation, right? Right. And it is. I always tell people, just by virtue of my identities doesn't mean I'm going to understand these
Right.
things. And I think there is this assumption that, as a Black woman, you understand everything related to DEI. Wrong. I don't.
Yes.
I got the same education everyone else got,
Yes.
right? So if they don't know, I probably don't know either. I may be experiencing things that I can't always name, right? And that's the beauty of education. It's liberating, right? Because now I can name. I'm feeling, I'm experiencing, I'm seeing something that I can't always name. And once I have the power to name it, I can then interrupt it, right? Or I can learn from it, right? Or I can address it, or I can heal from it, right? There's a healing.
There needs to be like a willingness too, right? There needs to be there's two parties.
Yeah.
Say there needs to be the one that identifies or that is speaking out of this situation, and then the other party needs to be also open-minded to understand it and want to engage in at least a conversation, because in the outer kind of communications out in the world, there's pushback.
Yeah.
So there's not a whole, society is not really embracing this. Obviously, we see the recent bills that are being passed here in Iowa against the LGBTQ community. The stoppage, or I don't know what to, the critical race theory in the school systems.
House File 802, right, where you can't talk about systemic racism and sexism, right?
Yes.
So right, we're creating legislation around people's feelings, which is fascinating. I don't know if people really sat down and looked at that, about feelings, right? If I feel uncomfortable, we can't talk about something.
Yes.
That's life. Everything's going to be uncomfortable at some point, and that's where growth happens. But
so why do you think that? I mean, I guess maybe that's not the question, but there's these two forces, this one side is this consciousness, this awareness of historically oppressed groups, women, LGBTQ, Black, brown, Asian,
our disability community,
right?
All.
So there's this push of give us a seat at the table type of conversation, and then there's this other of no, let's not talk about this in the schools. No, let's not do this. I don't even know if there's a question there, but I'm trying to understand why these two forces. Yeah.
Right. Why do we have varying opinions? And that's a fascinating question. And I'll be honest, I'm the kind of person I have to understand both sides of the argument. Right? And so I watch all kinds of news, but I watch CNN, I watch Fox News, I read comments on both because I'm trying to understand where are we at, right? Yeah. Where is our consciousness or our stream of thinking? And it's interesting because I think we're having two different conversations. And I think that's where people are getting lost, right? There's two different conversations. We're speaking two different languages, and we're expecting each other to understand and just be able to meet each other where we're at. But I think we have to step back, and one, I always say we first have to understand history, which there's been some pushback on history right now, right? Like, we don't, it can make people uncomfortable, but we have to. Like, that's what we do. That's what we owe ourselves. We owe our children. We owe our communities. And it's not to make people feel bad about anything. None of us were probably here when a lot of the concepts and the historical things we're talking about were happening. However, it's important for us to understand why people feel maybe disenfranchised or, why some people feel left out of the conversation. If I don't understand a history of exclusion, right? Like, I don't understand the history of segregation, then I don't understand why people feel like, I want to have access to certain spaces, right? Or I feel like I should be at the table if I've been historically excluded, right? So I can't make sense of that if I don't know that's a history, right? Or that was a thing. And so it really does start just basic at the sheer basics of us getting a understanding of history, and not just our own history. That's something I always try to push on and share with others is, it's one thing for me to learn about, women's history or African-American history, but I need to know the history of others. That's so important because we're having different conversations, and we need to be able to take this to a basic level to be able to understand, like, what are you really talking about? Because we can't always name what we're really talking about, but we're experiencing it, right? Or we've seen it, or, kind of the residual effects are still present. And that's really kind of what brought me to this conversation. I would say I'm from Denver, Colorado. And so as I was watching the fabric of the city, like, transform at lightning speed, right? Most times you kind of see it gradually over time. The city transitioned in like a 10-year time frame. So I'm going back every 6 months, every year. And I'm going, something's happening here, right? And people are starting to talk about, being displaced and gentrification, right? And so we can't always name it, but that was able to help me say, there's something happening here, right? I feel like I'm being pushed out of my community, right? I don't know how to name why it's happening, but it's happening, right? Or folks are coming in and saying, well, we want to be a part of a new community, right? And we want to invest and add resources to it. But then some folks are feeling like, but maybe you haven't always been here, so what makes you feel like you should be? And so we just got to, I think, come back to the basics and just be able to have a conversation with each other and be able to hear both sides. And I think sometimes this conversation gets very elitist. And so that's the other part I have to be careful of, because we could start talking, in this very like high level theoretical conversations again, and that's my privilege. I got to own my own privilege. I've had the opportunity to go to college and get advanced degrees, and again, not everyone has had that. So I need to be able to have this conversation at a level that we all can engage in. But I think that's the biggest thing is folks are like, well, it's your job and it's my job or it's their job, and no, it's all our job, right? We all are here and have a responsibility.
So I've noticed that a lot of people that are in this space are I'll say we, because we have to be politically correct, I guess. Or someone told me once, you can get invited to the table, but will you get invited again?
That's real.
So you gotta, sometimes it feels like you gotta tiptoe around some of the conversations, and kind of have a positive and philosophical kind of, approach to it. So then people don't get too uncomfortable or threatened. And that comes with energy, you know? And when you see, that big push, because it's fairly big. I mean, when legislation happens, that's big pushback. It's not just, where do you get your drive from? Like, where's the energy come from? Because, I'm sure there's people that just kind of feel hopeless, sometimes.
And, I've been reading articles, and I read the Register pretty frequently, and there was a family that's talking about leaving the state, right? They're going to Minnesota, right? Which is tragic. We don't want to lose people. But we do have to have a real conversation, I think, about how to engage in this conversation. And again, how to understand that everybody has the right to be able to live their life and have self-determination. Like, we don't get to decide what your humanity looks like. I didn't create you. I don't have that much power. I wish I did. So it's really interesting. But I think back to your point is, how do you have that conversation? I think we have to have it honestly, but with compassion. And I say it's always, most importantly, it has to be rooted in love. Like, where am I having this conversation from? Is it from a place of anger, resentment, or is it from a place of, I see your value, I see your humanity, and so I want to invite you in, right? Instead of making you feel like you're excluded. We got to invite everyone into this conversation. And everybody has an opinion. Now, it's not always knowledge. There's a difference between opinion and knowledge. But everyone still has an opinion that matters.
And I think people don't understand, just from the economic point of view, like you said, for example, this family that's leaving to Minnesota, that's not good for...
That's not good for business.
That's not good for business.
Anything.
Yes.
That's not good for us, right? We're losing people.
And typically, states and cities, they want more people.
That's kind of the goal, right? We want smart growth, right? And so it is. It's hard when it's like, okay, well, we're talking about people's lives, right? We're creating, legislation that impacts people's everyday lives, and have we had a chance to have a conversation with the people who it impacts? And that's where I'm trying to change this conversation, because often we do, and this is, on all sides, right? And this isn't just, Republicans or Democrats or independent, but we're often making decisions about people's lives without inviting people to the table to help us be more informed about what that means, right? And so, that's my hope, is that we can kind of shift this and just be able to hear from the folks it's impacting, right? But we often take this very paternalistic approach to life, and that's even as a parent. I dictate to my kids what their day is going to look like, right? What you're going to eat. And so we kind of get used to that. Like, I get to just dictate. But really what we want to do is be able to invite folks in and create a meal together instead of me dictating the meal.
So in the job that you have, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusive.
Yeah, inclusion.
Inclusion.
Yep, it's inclusive. Go ahead. I'm rolling with that. That's right.
I mean, tell me a little bit about what your experience is. Joshua Barr wrote an article in the Business Record, and it's an amazing article. But one of the things that I took away from is the constructive tension, I think he calls it. So do you run into that a lot? I mean, is that something that...
Right, it's real, right? And there has to be this constructive, like almost like tension, or even, as we talk about this term, like cognitive dissonance, where you come to something, you're like, wait, I believe one thing, but that doesn't match up with what I'm seeing, and how do I make sense of this, right? Or I'm feeling something, and it doesn't feel right. What do I do with this, right? And sometimes you need that constructive tension. But listen, I'm going to say first and foremost, and I've only had the chance to meet with Joshua twice, I believe, and he's a phenomenal individual, right? Like, I'm going to say he has helped set a blueprint for us here, at least within Central Iowa, of like, how do you do this, and how do you pull people in? He had an initiative. What is it called? Bridges, right? Building bridges.
So.
Or a seat at the table. I can't remember what the initiative was called, but just inviting people into your home. Right? Let's just have a conversation. Like, I want you to see how I live.
I think literally breaking bread.
That's what it's called. Thank you. Breaking bread.
Had them eat and tell each other.
Just tell me your story. Right? Because we all have one. And when we stop listening to each other's stories, right, or disregarding someone's lived experience, right, this is where we start to see the tension happen. We just got to break bread, right, and just come together and be in each other's environments to better understand it. But no, I think it is important, as I've been in my role now for only a year and a half, so I'm still new here, right, with the city of West Des Moines. And I will tell you, I applaud our city for having the courage to move forward with the role. So it's not even about me, but it's the role. And I think it says something to where we want to go and where we're trying to go. I applaud my city manager, Tom Haddon, who's always kind of pushed, like, okay, we're going to keep pushing forward, right? And our elected officials who are saying, okay, we're going to invest resources behind this, right? And we're trying to make sense of what this means for us as a city. Because I think historically, cities have been very kind of transactional, right? We provide services to the community, And so that's what we do, but it's very transactional. When people think of the city, it's like, oh, I got to go pay a bill, right? So it's usually not like, oh, I think really great things of my city, right, or my city hall. But we're really trying to move to be more relational. So it's not just about the transaction, right?
Like a mindset.
Yeah, right? Like, who are we serving, right? How are we ensuring that our built environment is as accessible as possible to the residents we serve, right? And no one's losing by being more accessible, right? It may cost a little more on the front end, but everyone benefits,
right?
Because we can all participate.
Eventually, it's more like an investment.
It is.
You invest, and then in the long run, it pays for itself, or then there's a
return on investment, right? There are dividends, and so until when we can start, I would say, and I wouldn't say even start because our city's been doing it, but I will say there's still a lot of work to be made, right? And so you have folks, and I think in a lot of roles who say this is a priority, or we see the value in this, but then we have to do a better job telling the story of why.
Is your job stressful? I mean, I
Of course not. It's easy.
Because I was the operations manager for my last employer before I started working or started my own company. And there were days where I was like at 3 a.m. trying to figure out what I was going to tell my team so they could buy into what, me even.
Right.
And it was very stressful because they were not buying in. They turned on me almost. We were homies. We were coworkers. And, I trained a couple of them and hired a couple of them. And then when I got the job as operations manager, it was like night and day.
Right. Like,
God, like started turning on me. And
you're the administration now, right?
Yes. And then
you're like, no, I'm just your colleague. And we work together for years.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was very stressful.
Yeah.
When people don't buy in, it's stressful because you're like, what do I have to say? What do I have to do? Where's your tell me more about the hurdles that come about, because I mean you're trying to change minds,
which is hard, right?
Yeah,
and
so
really I'm trying to change hearts,
right?
Which is hard to do.
Yeah,
right? I don't have that power. I mean, I always tell people. I told my team when I first got here, listen, I don't work for Marvel or DC. Don't think I'm your Wonder Woman or Superwoman. I ain't gonna save nobody.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest with people in that way. I think people look and they say, okay, there's this office here now and it's gonna fix everything.
Yeah.
I'm an office of 1.25. I got an intern, which I appreciate,
nice.
Right? Which is great. But it's a city, right?
Yes.
And there are things outside of the control of the city that I can't control always, that I think people expect, like, well, hey, jump in and fix it. I can't. I can't. What I can do is facilitate opportunity. That's what my job is. But it is stressful because I think, within this role, I'm trying to manage two components. There's the internal dynamics of the organization, right? That's just the city organization. Right? And then there's the external dynamics, right? Which is the broader city, right? And so how do you do both and do it well? And I think we're doing pretty good right now, right? And before we can get into even managing all that, it's just trying to build an infrastructure.
Yeah.
So, so that's the biggest thing right now is just trying to create kind of that roadmap of what this infrastructure needs to look like and how to scale it so that it can be successful. So I'm excited to now. I'm just going to say this right now. So cheap plug. I finally got a website. So I'm excited.
Nice. Okay.
So I finally have a presence on the city page, and my team has been phenomenal. And so that was really a collaborative approach of like, okay, I'm an officer one. I don't know how to build a website.
Yeah.
Not what I do. But I have a great communications and a Parks and Rec department and all the other departments, our human services, that came together and said, listen, we know how important this is. Let's get this moving. Yeah. But it's trying to make sure that people know where to go, right? So internally, where do we go? And externally, where do we go, right? We have our Human Rights Commission. How do we ensure that we're elevating the voices and the positioning of our human rights, right? Do even people know what human rights are, right? What are the 30 articles of human rights? Who can even tell you what that is, right? So we just got to do a lot of awareness building, right, and education around what this stuff means, because I think they're experiencing things. They know when something maybe doesn't feel right, but we can't always name it. So where are the resources to help connect you? And so that's, that's one of the biggest stressors is how do I manage all that, right?
How did you feel when you got the job? Was there like pressure? I mean, because these are new roles.
Oh yeah, and I'm not from here. That's the biggest pressure.
True,
right?
and that could be a big disadvantage to you
It's
because
a hurdle.
the history of the city,
Right.
has its own, and in every city, right? I was talking to Angela Jackson, and I asked her the same question: how much pressure does it feel? Because somehow they look at you,
It
right?
looks
You're
easy.
the DEI
Right.
person.
She's gonna fix everything. No, I'm not. I can't fix everything, but I can work with you, right? And this is where it has to be shifted to a community-based approach. We can fix this together, right? And that's the biggest thing. I'm trying to really, push that message and empower others to recognize we all have power. We all have power. And we all have agency and the ability to change some of the circumstances, at least within our spheres of influence. And so, again, we may not be able to fix the world, but we can band together and start looking at how can we start improving, enhancing at least West Des Moines.
Yeah.
But that was one of the hurdles, coming in. I would say that was a stress. I'm not from here, so yeah, I was excited about the role. I'm like, this is great, but like I got to now learn the history of this place, right? I'm going to, so it's not just a job, but I got to know the histories of the people that live there. I need to learn the history of the city. What is the history of our interactions? I will say, in the beginning, I would go to events, and try to connect with people. And I had a few instances, not always, but where people, I would say, yeah, I'm the new DEI director for West Des Moines. And people go, oh. And I was trying to understand, what did that mean? Like, why am I getting that energy? What's this mean? Help me understand. Let's unpack this. But there's a history, right? And so I had to step back because at first, I was internalizing this. Like, oh, wait, why would they? It's not about me.
Yeah.
This is not about me. And that's important as well. I have the privilege and the pleasure of serving in this role. And I'm a very spiritual person. So I just ask God to give me the strength and the power and the direction and guidance of how to create this and bring maybe some healing and restoration to our community. But a lot of this stuff ain't about me. But what I'm going to try to do is let's come together, right? How do we start pulling people together to start talking about what that energy is, right? Like, what does that mean and why are you feeling that way? But we also got to do a deep dive into our own histories.
Yeah.
And so, that was important is, I can't just jump in and start doing the work. I got to first find the people,
Yeah.
build the trust, learn the history before we can start saying, okay, we're going to change things. Wrong. Because that's where I think we go wrong often is we want to just jump in and start doing things without understanding kind of the climate or understanding the feelings within that space.
Yeah. And one of the conversations that I was having with someone, like, hopefully there's a segue here, but was that some organizations are approaching people like me. I'm not an expert in DEI. I can only speak for my experience, my immigrant experience.
But you're an expert on that, though.
Right. But, like, that's mine.
Right.
And then, so what is happening is they're gathering people like me, and other business owners, and then they like give us the information, tell us what to do.
Tell me the answers, right?
Yes.
Which we got to push back on that a little bit.
Yes, I think so. I did it not too long ago, and I felt
Exploited?
Huh?
Exploited?
Yes. Nah, I wouldn't say exploited. Yes, there's a little bit of that and a little bit of like, yes, exploit. I think
And
more
maybe it's
exploited.
tokenized,
Like,
right?
yeah,
Like sometimes we get tokenized and put in these boxes of, okay, you can help me with this, right? We're struggling with our DEI initiatives. I know, AMNER, he owns a minoritized business. He can tell us the answers.
yes.
And again, I think that's the fallacy sometimes in our thinking. It's, again, just because I'm a person of color doesn't mean that I have all the answers for you.
Yes. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
no, don't tokenize and don't, there's that the discussion around the single story narrative, right? And sometimes we put people in this box of this single story, like, oh, that's just all you are as a minoritized business owner. That's it. Now, let me explain to you what my business does. First, before you just want to exploit my identity, right? Or maybe even tokenize me. Let's just talk about how my business can work with your business, and not in a way that's again seems disingenuous. But that is a hard part, because I think people want to do better and they don't know where to start.
Yes.
So it's just like,
so they got to make mistakes.
Right. And they're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna make mistakes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make mistakes. I keep telling folks that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. But we got to give enough grace to say, okay, let me just explain to you, like, maybe that's not the right approach. So I appreciate you reaching out and wanting to know more and learn more, but I can't speak for everyone, right? This isn't my area of expertise. There are experts out there who've done the studying, who've read the theory, who understand some of these very intricate things.
That are doing it too.
And who are doing the work, right? There's a lot of practitioners.
Yes, which is like their livelihood. And that's kind of where I was getting at on the investment part, when you said like there's an investment here. In the front it looks like a cost, but it's an investment. In the long run, it comes back, like just financially, it comes back. But so that's kind of why I felt like, I felt sort of way. I don't know exactly, but then I was having conversations with other people, and it's like, that's maybe they didn't do it on purpose, but that's devaluing information that they need, that they should invest and pay somebody to give them this information.
Right. Because this ain't free.
Right. So there's this valuable information that this organization and many want and need and want to reach out and do it, and then they create this, and then they create another problem for themselves. Like, now you just use me to give you all this information, which is fine. But I felt like now I'm undercutting people that are doing this work, that should be getting, that organization should invest on an expert consultant to help them in their organization. Right. So there was a few things that I was like, am I really helping here?
And again, there's a lot of experiential knowledge. So I will say, again, speaking to your experience, that matters. But I think sometimes, it's like me going to someone and say, hey, I know you do, intellectual property, right? Give me your trade secrets. Yeah. Like, give me your IP. Like, who people be like, no, I'm not going to just give you my secrets and my patent. And no, you pay for this stuff. Like, it's patent, and you got to pay to use it. You got to pay to use or tap into my knowledge, just like anything else. But I think that is where there's a disconnect around kind of DEI, is people are like, oh, it's easy and it's free. Like, let me just
gather some people.
Right, let me just get some, black, brown, and minoritized and BIPOC folk in the space, and they could just tell me what I need to do. No, it don't work that way.
So it's fair to say to organizations or people that want to really, truly dive into this conversation and move it forward, is you need to start reaching out to paid services.
Well, yeah, I would say, and again, and I sometimes give my services for free. So I'm not, but again, I get paid by the city and I support folks, but reach out to experts who are willing to give you that information or pay for it, right? But don't think you get it for free. And I think that's where there's a big disconnect of, I could just get this for free. No, this is knowledge just like anyone else's knowledge, right? If I'm asking you about stocks and investments, right? Edward Jones ain't gonna be like, yeah, let me just give this to you. Like, no, because you understand the value of their knowledge. See the value in my knowledge as well, right? And so it's just an ethical thing, I would say.
Yes.
And it gets a little unethical when we just start tapping folks and asking for information without giving compensation, right? This is my knowledge. But, and there's a term, I sometimes toy around with, and we use this voyeurism, and we got to confront that. A voyeur is like, I just like to take and take, right? And is there an exchange that's happening, right? And so that's what we're trying to get to, this place of reciprocity, right? Like, okay, I got knowledge that might be valuable to you. Okay, I'll give you that knowledge, but there has to be reciprocity, whether that's compensation or you're giving or providing something, but you can't just continue to exploit and take advantage of what I have. And again, not build into what I'm trying to do, right? It just doesn't feel right? Nobody else would expect that or want that, right? And so everybody wants just compensation, right?
Yes.
Everybody. That's not asking too much.
What's the city of West Des Moines doing right?
Ooh.
So the
That's
because
a great question.
I'll tell you why. So
I'll tell you, we're doing a lot though.
yes.
We're doing a lot right.
So I I was invited to the Black and Brown Business Summit 2 years ago, and I participated in a pitch competition, and I almost like when I was one of the finalists, and on the first day it was at the Athene big building in West Des Moines, and I almost like didn't go in because like the building is such a huge size, and I was like intimidated. Yeah, and I'll use the word Americanized. You know, actually I just became a U.S. citizen.
Look at you.
Yesterday, officially, yes.
Big deal.
It's a huge sacrifice that my mom did, and you know, it's a long. It was emotional day, and I'm still feeling some of that today. Even like very happy and glad, and you know that all of her sacrifices, paid off. So I wanted to honor that moment. And I shared it with people. I usually don't share that much. I mean, we share all the business stuff, but this one I'm like, no, I think my mom deserves this.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but even so, I went to middle school here, high school.
Right. You grew up here.
Yeah. So, and I was intimidated, and I didn't. I almost didn't go in. But when I went in, I went a little skeptical because is it just a photo op situation?
Right.
Is this kind of like just a checking the box and stuff? And I was pleasantly proven wrong. It was very well done. All the panelists, I could relate to the panelists. They looked like me. They talked like me. They,
connected with you.
Right.
We're accessible. Phenomenal.
So then I was like, oh man, who's doing all this?
What's
Because
going on over here?
And the second day I was like, oh,
go ahead.
Because I organized a music festival for like 9 years.
Okay.
And I know what it takes to put an event together. And that was their first year, and it felt like they were doing it for years.
Right.
So I was like, oh, so and then they did the DEI awards, which you were the recipient of the.
Of the DEI Leader of the Year
Award.
Yeah.
Yes. I went to that as well. And also like, let me see, because
listen, the chamber. Listen, let me tell you about the West Des Moines Chamber. Let me tell you about Angela Franklin as well. And again, just Terrence Thank. There are so many incredible people we have in our community, and that's where our treasure is. And I think we forget that. Like, folks know what they're doing around here. Even we got so many gems in our community that I think sometimes people don't recognize. When they say, a prophet's not received in their own backyard, right?
Yeah.
Their own home. And so this is the challenge. Sometimes we got to take off the blinders and be able to see and say, again, we got all these incredible folks and talent right here. Let's invest in folks here.
Yes.
Instead of feeling like we got to go out to the coast or down. Like, we got folks right here.
Yes.
Making
with
big
great
moves.
minds.
Right, making big moves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is the city of West Des Moines doing right?
Yeah.
It does seem to be leading the way a little bit compared to Des Moines, for example.
Man, I would never disparage my Des Moines brothers and sisters and colleagues who are doing great work as well. But it's a different dynamic.
Yes.
And so, I have to tell people, it's not an apples to apples. We have different histories. And that's just where we got to start, right? It's understanding that history. Des Moines has always been this urbanized space where you have, all these diverse communities. And West Des Moines is very diverse as well. And I think that's kind of sometimes the thing people don't realize. They're like, oh, it's West Des Moines, affluent, a lot of, very white, and we're not as homogenous as people think. And so I want to say what the 2020 census said. Our residents identified almost 21% as non-white. We're very diverse.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that we're doing well. I will tell you, there's been a real intentional push to work more collaboratively, at least in my time here, and that's been huge. I'm gonna, I got to give a shout out again and kudos to my chamber partners who've been doing great work and really trying to elevate, and just even introduce people to this DEI conversation. Like, it matters, right? There's a benefit to it, right? There's the business case. There's also the moral case, right? Which both are important. And so I think they kind of help prime the soil, and then you had my role come on, and I shouldn't say mine. There was the district, the West Des Moines Community Schools District. There's my role. There's other roles throughout these some of the corporations and businesses in West Des Moines. So there's a synergy that's kind of being built. And again, it's to build this very robust, culture, which is already there. But like, how do we ensure that everyone is flourishing? This is good for business. This is good for our city.
Yeah.
Like, the better our residents do, the better we do. And so I think there's just an understanding and a recognition, I should say, that this is beneficial to everyone, right? We win, right? And West Des Moines has always, had this kind of this mantra of progress. We're always building, we're always developing, we're always growing, or at least we're always trying to grow, right? And having a healthy, sustainable growth rate. But, in order to do that, the communities are shifting, right? And so how do we ensure that everyone is building and growing and flourishing together? And so I think there's a willingness to see that. And so I would say, one, that's been the biggest win, because I don't have to do as much minds and heart shifting, right? People are there. So I don't have to come in and say, well, y'all pay attention to this because it matters. They know it matters.
So diversify from the top. That way the minds on the top can spread the
right. And it kind of, there's that trickle down effect. That's what we talk about, right? So that's been huge. But, other wins, we've had a lot of wins in just this past, I would say in my short tenure here. We've had programming that we've done. Like I said, we implemented and I say citywide, I have to be careful because people are like, wait, all residents? No, within the organization, the city organization, we're doing training for all city staff around a lot of these accessibility, belonging, inclusion, and so I think we're starting to get there, right? And so we're building that awareness, and that's been huge. That's a big win, I would say. And we're kicking off something here pretty soon, which is a Community Engagement Institute. It will be starting the last week of April. The application goes live today. And so it will be open till April 7th. But it's geared towards underrepresented populations. It's a 6-week institute once a week, but trying to get folks connected with their local officials, right? Meeting with the mayor and your city council folk and the department leaders and directors and operations, and really learning what we do, right? But then also not just learning how the city operates, right? But then also providing us critical, information about how we can better serve our respective communities. And so, just trying to start having a community-wide conversation.
Right. Let me kind of shift a little bit the conversation. Is it possible to do this job wrong?
Yes.
We miss the mark sometimes.
Yes.
I missed the mark last time when I went to this meeting because I'm like, I'm not helping here. But there are some actors, some players that I think do it. Well, maybe not. Maybe like, are they aware that they do it wrong? And this kind of has historical implications, But for example, there's a person where they have the backing of politicians and they're friendly with the police department, which not saying that you shouldn't, but because like the fingers gets pointed at only one side of the problem, and then I'm like, well, but that's not the only problem. That's not the only cause of the problem. Why not point out the other elements that create this problem? So in a way, for me, that's kind of wrong, because now you're just kind of pointing a finger, and then that's why everybody else is on your side, because you're saying what they want to hear.
That's interesting. It's a multifaceted challenge, and so, I'm always careful to be critical of others, but we can be critical. I mean, I think that's important. Constructive feedback, critical feedback is so important, even for myself, like I don't have this all figured out.
Yes.
Right? We're still building something, and really we should be building together. So I think we can do it wrong when we get kind of stuck in our own silos and thinking we understand it all, right? Like, oh, it's just this, or it's just that, or that's just the problem. No, this whole social fabric is so multifaceted. Our communities have so many areas for opportunity that if we just overlook one area, then again, it will still permeate into others, right? And so we got to really kind of take a multifaceted approach, which is hard.
Yeah.
But I would say there's no just one issue, right? There's no just one, like, okay, they're just the problem, or you're just the problem, or they're just the problem. No, we all got to do some self-examination, to be honest.
Who do you check in with? Like, I check in with, like, my wife and my, my team here. It's like, hey, guys, what do you think? Like, please tell me if I'm wrong.
Right.
Yes.
help me, right?
Yeah.
Like, tell me what I don't know.
Yeah.
Or how I missed the mark. That's a good question. I have a small team of folk that I'm near and dear to. I came from Iowa State before coming down to West Des Moines. And so I have a band of sisters there that I check in with. Like, they are my rock. And so I have to make calls pretty frequent going like, listen, this is what I'm hearing, or this is what I'm experiencing, I'm dealing with. Give me some insight. Tell me where I'm wrong, or how am I not seeing all the pieces? But you got to have honest people in your life. I'll tell you, I got an incredible brother. Listen, I'll tell you, my guy, I call him the young prophet, Dr. Dow Jock. Like,
okay.
Sometimes I'll check in with Dow, like, listen, Dow, give me some insight. Which the man, this, and that's, I'm telling you, y'all better get ready and buckle your seats.
I need to meet him.
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But again, a person with so much love and compassion. I think that's where, we get it wrong when we aren't, having an honest conversation with ourselves and with others.
Yes.
And so you got to have folks that you check in with. But, I would say my band of sisters, that's my rock.
It's not like about doubting yourself, but like question yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And it's not,
like wonder, like, wait.
Right.
Am I doing this right?
But you do. We got to take critical feedback and you have to be honest. Going back to philosophy, like whenever I think I know all the answers, that's when I'm messing up.
Yes.
Right. When I feel like I know everything that there is to know, that's when I'm failing. But when you understand that you don't have all the answers and that there are so many other people who have pieces to this puzzle, you got to pull them in. That's when we can grow together. And so, yeah, I think it's a challenge, but you got to have people you can trust, and that also have your best interest.
Have you had that situation where you're like, wait, have you called somebody out? Be like, wait.
Oh, listen, I've had a couple.
You're
a
like,
couple
come on.
situations, like that don't feel right, or that didn't sit well with me. Like, let me have this conversation with you, and I fumble them sometimes. I'm gonna be honest. I fumbled one probably recently where I was like, I'm just mad. And I'm gonna tell them about them something wrong. That's not the right way to do it. 'Cause it was about me because I was mad. That's not right.
Yes.
Right. If it's about them, right. If it's about really understanding their humanity, but also really doing this from a place of love. This is about their best interest, not just mine.
Yeah.
And so, I fumble. I'm not gonna act like I don't. That's a part of the, humility challenge. Is like just recognizing we're gonna make mistakes, but we got to be willing to give each other grace, right, and come back into community, right. And so, if I do make a mistake, I got to own it, right, and then I have to say, okay, I'm gonna do the work to come back, and come back, into this place of wholeness. But if I'm not trying to do the work, that's when it gets hard. Some folks, they fumble and they're like, I don't care. That's where I struggle.
Yeah.
Like, nah, you ain't right.
Right.
And you got to own that. Because if we want to repair the relationship, then we got to be willing to take ownership of where we messed up.
Yeah. You're a student of philosophy.
Yeah, sure. I was student of life.
History.
I'm gonna put that right.
Which historical figure aligns with you the most?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I'll say this. I don't know if it's a historical figure that aligns with me the most, but there's somebody who I just love, and I used to struggle with this.
Okay.
So I'm going to give it two answers, but one is Michelle Obama. Listen, I love her. I have to remind myself, like, listen, that's your cousin. That's okay. She's not. Full disclosure. But, when I was a little bit younger, I used to have people come up to me often. They'd be like, man, you remind me of Michelle Obama, which is the biggest compliment ever. But at that time, I was offended. I used to get mad. I'd be like, excuse me? Well, because she's an articulate, well-dressed Black woman, I got to be Michelle Obama. So I would just get all kinds of upset. And I had to grapple with that. Like, why am I upset, right? Are they saying something that's negative? No, like, that's the biggest compliment I could ever get, until I was in D.C. A few years back. And I happened to be hanging out with friends, and one of her, I don't even know if I should be telling this story, but one of her Secret Service detail, they aren't supposed to tell you who they work for, right? But he, worked closely with the Obamas. And so he's sitting there. I didn't know him. I didn't know who he worked for. He was like, man, I got to tell you, I've been sitting here. I close my eyes. I'm listening to you, kind of watching you, your cadence. You remind me so much of Michelle Obama. Yeah. And at that moment, I was like, I got to own it. Listen, I'm taking that. Own it. Listen, I'm taking it. I hope I can. I don't, listen.
You know what? I'm not gonna lie, I was watching some videos of you doing your acceptance speech for the award that you got, and it's true. It did remind me too. You speak so well in public too.
I'm going to take it. I love it. But yeah, listen, that's one person who I have to channel all the time. I'm like, listen, because there are moments where I even have imposter syndrome. I'm like, you're dealing with opposition. You're like, am I doing this right? People are resistant. Like, listen, Michelle Obama's your cousin. Stop playing. See, the Obamas.
You got this.
I got this whole mythical story in my mind to help recenter me. Like, this is okay. But, and I got to go back to my faith, So really, as we talk about, like, historical figures that I really try to tap into, I'm going to be just fully transparent. This is not my job and what I do. But everything I try to ascribe goes back to my faith. And so, this sounds so, like, cliche, people like Jesus, right? But Yeshua, Jesus, however you want to acknowledge him, but, with such a radical figure, right? Like, we don't understand the radicalness of Jesus or Yeshua, right? To be able to push against the grain and say, listen, y'all, we ain't doing things right. Like, I'm flipping tables. I ain't trying to flip tables, right? But we got to re-examine our hearts, right? We're living in a time of such legality and legalism. Like, we're missing the mark, people, right? Like, you can be as articulate as you want to be, but, like, if you ain't got love, you just sounding gongs. Like, so I try to go back to that and, like, reorient my mind on a daily basis of, why am I doing this, right? And so that's where, I would say my kind of social justice journey kind of takes me back to, like I said, my family. And again, my mother, listen, my mom is a powerhouse. Like, powerhouse. I said she was born in a different generation. Listen, the Obamas, y'all better know her. But, the great evangelist Elizabeth, who, again, was fearless. My mother is fearless. And so it came from her belief system. Like, she knew she wasn't accountable to people. I'm not worried about people.
Yes.
There's a higher power I'm accountable to. So even after this time and this age and this life,
that's true freedom, isn't it? Like, when you're fearless, when you no longer are accountable. Yeah.
Like, and again, it's not saying that I don't care about people. I care about you, but I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right? And so for me, it always goes back to my faith, right? And trying to remind myself, like, because we can get stuck in kind of the mundane, everyday, process of life of like, okay, I'm coming in, I do this job, and our jobs become our identities. Like, no, that can't be my identity. I'm something bigger than just my job, right? I'm this multi-layered individual. I'm a mother. I'm a partner, a wife. I'm a sister. I'm a friend. Like, who am I, right? And so
I'm amazing. It's amazing how it's amazing the impact of Jesus.
Yeah. Right. Listen, I know we don't usually have these spiritual conversations, right? People we go, like, can we say it? Like, listen, Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, just as a man that walked this earth, I mean, the fact that we still talk about him,
right? But even as a philosopher, some people may not believe, like, oh, he may not be the savior to everyone, and that's okay. I'm never going to tell somebody that has to be their life or what they believe, but I will say, just his philosophy, right? Like, it's so radical of, like, we got to re-examine this situation, right? And again, we can't get stuck in these boxes of just doing things because we've been told that's how we got to do it. Like, is it right?
Yes.
What is righteousness? What is love? What is that rooted in? What is the fruit of the Spirit, right? And so,
was it Martin Luther King that said, there are unjust laws.
Right? Justice anywhere is injustice everywhere, right? And so there are unjust laws, and we got to remember that. Laws are created by us.
Right.
We're people.
Yeah.
We're fallible. So there's always going to be injustice in
Yes.
in law, right? And so at one point in time, law said I wasn't fully human, right? Like,
yes.
let me go back to that. Like, I don't. And so that's where we have to go back and go, yeah, and not to tell somebody that you don't obey the laws, right? Also, you know, again, I want to say, Paul said, or you know, you should say it again. You adhere
Not promoting
to the laws
anarchism
of the land. We adhere to the laws of the land, right? And give to Caesar what is Caesar, and give to God what is God's. But again, we have to understand that sometimes things are unjust, right? Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's morally right or just. And I think sometimes we conflate that. Right, like, well, it's legal, so it's right.
right.
Yeah, I got to question something, right? Like, is that right?
Yeah.
And really, why was it created, right?
Yeah.
It's usually in response to something, but that something may not always prevail over time.
What about most recent, like the prominent, historical figures, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X,
Right. Listen, I was just
James Baldwin.
Listen, I'm going to tell you who.
Because they all were different. Like Malcolm X was a separatist in simple words, right? Where Martin Luther King was hard and peace.
He was like a nonviolence, right?
Right.
We try to take a nonviolent approach. I would say Malcolm was violent. He never said take violence, but again,
he would just say like,
listen,
you hit me,
you
I'll
gotta
hit you
defend
back.
yourself, right? It was about self defense, right, and self determination in many ways. But I would say like the person, if this is what you're asking, like I really try to ascribe to is the great Mother Bell Hooks. She's a Black feminist scholar.
Okay.
Profound. And so again, I would say a lot of her work, especially around like marginality theory, like living on the margins. It's just so profound, and that really shifted my thinking. Specifically as a younger Black woman at one point in time, where sometimes you feel like you're on the outside in. It was Brother Malcolm who talks about the woman at greatest risk is a Black woman, right? Like the Black woman has in this history, at least of contemporary U.S. history, have always been relegated to the margins, right? We've been on the outside, right? And everything in opposition of us is considered beauty, right? And so really reclaiming the margin, right? Like, so sometimes we think being on the outside is a problem. No, there's sometimes a benefit on being on the margin. And so kind of reclaiming that power, because when I'm on the margin, I'm seeing everything from a different angle. But I'm also seeing you, and I'm seeing you, and I'm seeing you, and I'm seeing you. And you don't often see me, but I understand very intricately how this system is working. I can see it from a different vantage point. And so there's a beauty and there's a benefit in being in the margin sometimes. So, I have to remind myself that, when I sometimes feel on the margin, like, that's okay, because you're seeing it from a different perspective, right? And this gives you.
So she promoted embracing this.
Yes, and really embracing like who we are as Black women, right? And understanding our power, like I think, because again, historically, Black women have been told that you are powerless, right? Our bodies, we talk about even our bodies were at one point in time something we didn't even have ownership of, right? And so it's really trying to reclaim and reaffirm not just who we are, but the gifts and talents that lie within us, and the historical knowledge and wisdom that kind of is within us, that we hold, that we don't often consciously recognize, but we move from, right? Like there's a beauty in the Black woman, right? I'm going to tell you about yourself. I'm going to tell you about life. And there's some of the wisest individuals you'll ever meet because of the opposition we've had to experience throughout the course of recent contemporary history. So
people of color, African American Black people, especially, I think I like to credit for like the pop culture, for example, music, art, and dance, and even to this day, TikTok. It's first is about African American, then it takes over, and then
define in a lot of ways the culture, and we can't run from that in ways, right? Not all. There's an amalgamation of all kinds of cultures, but
and Harriet Tubman, for example, she was an integral part of the
Underground Railroad, right?
Freeing, or at least the movement of
freeing
freeing slaves.
Yeah.
And at some point, black women would breastfeed the like slave owners.
Often, right?
Right.
Right,
That's what.
right. We're nurses, right? We talk about nursing. Right? And
So
then-
now, people of color, black women, black men, African American, are put in this DEI jobs to drive the conversation forward yet again in a way. At least that's kind of how I'm kind of, seeing it a little bit.
Right.
So there's not a question there. It's just like credit is where credit is due.
Yeah. And it's history, right? And I always have to remind myself and others, it's not that we have some type of superpower, though I would, I think we have some superpowers.
Yeah.
But, however, I will say it comes from a resiliency that's rooted in oppression, right? And so when we can understand what oppression does to people, it's like the diamond in the coal, right? When you get squeezed so tight and so hard and there's so much pressure is put on it, it turns into the diamond, right? Turns into a diamond. And so there are gems that we gain from oppression. Not to say it's okay. Oppression's not okay, right? None of us should have to live oppressed. So this is not endorsing like continue oppression and be happy living in it. No, that's not right, and it should not be. But there is a resiliency that you build. There is a perspective that you develop, right? There's a creativity that comes from it. And so that's where I think you see that, like this real creative arts culture.
Yeah.
And we are kind of the torch bearers, I would say, of culture oftentimes within the U.S. at least. And I would say globally in many ways. But, there is something that happens in these spaces where when you are being pushed by all these external elements, there's a creativity that comes from it. There's an awareness that comes from it, right? And so you're starting to question things like, this don't make sense. Hey, what y'all tell me is this is right and free. This don't feel that right and free. So you start to question things. And so, I think it just comes from the historical experiences of African Americans in the U.S. or black people in the U.S., those, who come from enslavement. There is some knowledge, there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge that came from those experiences. And again, it wasn't right. But it built a resilience, right?
And also the strength to like say something about it and do something about it, right?
Right. But and again, we've been experimenting with this for over 400 years, right? And so we've been trying to make sense of this for 400 years. Since the first enslaved Africans were brought over in 1619, right? The 20 or so folk who were brought over. And so we've been trying to, and again, it wasn't quite chattel slavery at that time, but it morphed and and transformed into that. And so we've been questioning this for centuries, right? And trying to make sense of it. Someone saying you're not a human, but I know I'm a human, right? Like you're saying you aren't worth anything, but I know I'm worth something. Like you're comparing me to animal, but no, I know I'm worth more. And so you're always questioning, right? And so I think it just kind of comes through the experience and the history.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes
Tupac
sense.
said, what did he say? A rose can grow out of
Cement, right?
concrete,
Out of
cement,
concrete, right? I think it is. So, right, that's it.
Yeah.
Right. So the circumstances around you may look bleak, but there's always a hope.
Yeah.
There's a hope. And so.
And I rather be like that or think in those terms of like, positivity and good energy eventually goes further, because there is a section of society that are hopeless, they're pushed to the fringes of society.
Right.
And disenfranchised or disillusioned voters, they don't vote, they don't participate, which is kind of against of what your program is, which is like engage with your city council, talk to them, meet them, see who they are, and so then something can happen, because if you're on disillusion and hopeless and you think that nothing happens, then you're kind of playing into the hands of the powers that want you to feel that way.
Right. And that's it, right? So we're and we have to reclaim sometimes, our spaces, our voices, and that's why it's important that we're doing this together, so it's not just, us kind of being relegated to just one area or just one industry, even back to your point of like, black people kind of always been leading kind of this DEI space, right? And I think there's reasons why. Like I said, there's histories. But We also don't want to be relegated to just one space, right? And I would, I just find it interesting. I would tell my students, so I'm kind of going off on a sidebar, but one of my colleagues and I would always tell students, we're like, we want to do what you do. And I'm like, baby, you better go get that engineering degree. Okay, let me let you get that computer science degree. No, listen, I need you to be in these other areas where you can make an impact, because we don't want to be relegated to just one space. But we also have to be willing to pull other people in, right? And not to say it's just on our backs. No. Lorenzo Dago said, the bridge called my back. It's not on just us, right? This is where it's everybody's job, right? And we all got to come together and start having not just a conversation, but a willingness to take action and say, okay, we want to become a better society. We want to be a better country. We're looking at our country right now. We're so polarized. And not to say we haven't always been in many ways, but I think it was at least suppressed in ways. And now, we got to a place where things have become so emboldened. There's so much, hate and xenophobia and all sorts of stuff that's happening right now that, again, we got to lower the temperature, because we're not going to survive if we don't. All we got is each other. And until we understand that, no, you can't escape. We can't escape these things, right? We're at a point where it's either we're going to have to start working together or we're all going to perish together.
Yeah.
So,
well, this conversation is for a lifetime. Someone told me, Isaiah Knox has actually told me. I said, how do you, why do you do what you do? He's the director of Urban Dreams. Right. He's like, man, this is for a lifetime. We're just doing our piece. Yeah.
That's
and
it.
Somebody else in the future is gonna do their piece. It's just more of a, which I was like, wow. See, we can talk about this and continue talking about it. But I'll leave with this. I don't know who said it, and I'd like to give them credit, but I don't know who said it. But they said, listen to black women.
That's it. That's it. Drop the mic.
So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
This is exactly what I was hoping and what I was expecting, and it surpassed my expectations of this conversation. So I'm sure we'll be talking again, working together, hopefully, and seeing how we can do our little
together.
Part.
That's it. We got to build together, and that's for everyone. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. There you have it. Audrey Kennis, the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the City of West Des Moines.
I like how you had to read it.
I know, because, this is part of the, I'm Exhibit A on, how...
The problem.
Yes. Yes. And how, we need to talk about this more so people understand it and they don't just kind of use it as a tag and, use it against, weaponizing the word, to fit their benefit. So that's why I think it's important just to kind of unpackage this and see what it is. I'm gonna stick with what she said. What is it to be fully human? That's what I'm gonna stick with for So then it's, if you start it from there. We're fucking dumb. We don't have anything.
Yourself, man.
We don't have anything to contribute. I'm just asking questions to her.
We're just small
learning.
Potatoes, man.
Yeah.
We have nothing to offer.
But you know what?
We are nothing. We're
That's
scum.
a good thing.
We're filth.
We need to. I like going into conversations not knowing. Because that's what makes me a good interviewer.
That's the best part.
Yeah, I'm okay with not knowing.
It sucks going into a conversation knowing what the other person's gonna say.
Yeah, but there's the next few guests that we're gonna have. They know this, they have it in their, it's they're thinkers. So if you ask them a question, they answer it with elegance and if I ask you something, let me see. All right, what is it to be? What is it to be fully human, Kenji?
Fuck you. I wasn't ready. You fuck.
Your eyes are like.
You, bro.
Oh. But That's the journey I'm embarking on, the diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation, and we'll just see where it goes. I bet you in a few months we're gonna have a better understanding of it, and hopefully somebody sees this and they can share it.
Like the company, once it grows more, you have to.
Yes,
Because you
because
have to. You just gotta, keep everyone, in your mind and in your thoughts.
yes,
Everybody has to be included.
yes, we're a
It's
perfect example. The more we grow, the more we can't just be telling each other to fuck off.
Yeah, right. Well,
I still tell you that.
yeah, I'm gonna tell you to fuck off. No matter what.
but yeah, true.
Totally
Like,
private. Like,
as an
private.
organization, we have to think about all this stuff. So then we can retain, and this is key for a company, like to retain talent. Retention is a big word in employment, right?
Especially now.
Yeah, hiring, retention, culture, like all those are.
That almost blows my mind that there are people that push against this, knowing that you have a problem with retention, bro.
Yeah. Look inward.
How about include everybody?
Yeah.
How about don't be a dickhole?
Yeah.
Hey, it's a valid point. I think.
Yeah.
Don't be an ass.
If
Include everybody.
If you're having hiring problems and retention problems, look inside.
Right.
Look internally. Something's wrong because people are leaving and people don't want to come to your team. And it's not an easy task, but it's also not impossible.
Right.
If you're really willing to open your mind and just be like, oh, all right, that's why big corporations are doing it, because they're not dumb. They know that there's a dollar sign attached to this, and it's on the plus side too. It's not just an investment but like they gain more money. Corporations are making more money by being more conscious about their culture and their, So I think let's leave it at that, so then we don't like break it out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and share, comment, suggest, like,
subscribe.
There's no subscription yet.
Yeah.
Oh, there is on YouTube. Yeah.
If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe.
Yeah.
Like the video.
Yeah. We're gonna keep doing this.
Hit the bell too,
Yeah.
so you can get notifications.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Do that. All right. Thank you everybody, and we'll see you next time.